Do you share your Mac with others? Stay tuned to find out how local user accounts can help you.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello and welcome back to ACSP macOS 11 Big Sur. I am Zach and this is Don, our expert. You are an expert, aren't you, Don?
Sometimes.
I think he is. I really do. So we're talking about local user accounts today, right? And how we can use them to our benefit.
Yeah. We're going to learn about how to create user accounts because that's how we get started with this stuff. And then we'll see kind of how they benefit us, how they help us keep data separate and other things. We'll also learn about some of the different types of user accounts because believe it or not, they're not all created equal. We have 5 different types of accounts to learn about. So we'll get a chance to see each of those and how they interact so we know which type of account to create to meet our needs.
So what tool or tools do we need to or use to manage our accounts?
It's actually really nice because it is all in one place. So we don't have to go to different places to set all this up, and it's all in our system preferences. So let's dive into my computer and we'll get started with that. So I'm going to jump up to my Apple menu up top, and I'm going to go to System Preferences. And inside of System Preferences, the tool that I'm looking for is this guy right here, Users and Groups. And when you click that, you'll see the user accounts that are on your system. Now, when you install macOS, there's a screen where it asks you, hey, what's your first name and last name? What's your username? That's it creating your first user account. So at a minimum, you will have 1 user account in here. It's up to you if you want to create additional ones, but this is the tool. I said there were 5 different types. All 5 we would be creating right from here. So this is kind of our go-to place for managing user accounts.
Are all user accounts treated the same?
They're treated the same as far as how they're displayed, but their functionality is very different, right? So there's 5 different types of user accounts, and the standard user and the administrator user are the most common. Those are the ones that we normally use. There's also a standard user with parental controls. There's a sharing only user, and there's groups. So groups are obviously very different, right? But all 5 of those things are managed from right here in this one place. So what I'm seeing on my screen is actually a mixture of those, but they are different permission-wise. And you can kind of see that here where I've got like current user and other user. They'll all be listed, but then they are divided up by that functionality. And something else I should have pointed out here is that I can't really do much from this screen until I unlock it. So I'm going to click the unlock button here and provide my password. You need to be an administrator to mess with user accounts. And now my screen changed a little bit, kind of enabled some of these buttons, and now I can start to work with it.
Do we use all 5 types or are some more important than others?
Some are more important than others, and you certainly don't have to use all 5 types. In fact, most people are just going to use one, the admin. Right? I have an account right here, Don Pezet. I'm an admin, and that's it. I don't actually have any standard users the way this looks right here. But when I go and start creating user accounts, that's where I'm going to have to make a choice. So let me just show you that. I'm going to hit the plus sign down here to add a user account. And when I do that, it's going to ask what type of account I'm creating, and it defaults to a standard user. So maybe I want Zach to have an account.
Thank you.
I want you to use the computer, but I don't want you to break it. So I don't want to make you an administrator. Right. If I hit this drop-down box, I can choose administrator. Now Zach can do whatever he wanted. And believe me, if you know Zach, he can do some real damage. So I want to make sure that it's a standard user so that doesn't happen. Now, before I get too far, I want to point something out that I usually forget about. Look up here at my status bar up top. And notice how I've got like my option screen, my spotlight, my wireless signal, and so on. When I start creating more user accounts, you're going to see this change. And so I just want to highlight that before it changes, and we'll see it in just a moment. But I'm going to create an account for Zach. So I will come in and do that. So we'll get you a ZMemis account, and I'll give you a password and punch that in. And that's really all I need to create a user account, right? Just a name and a password. The full name is what will show up on the screen. And so if I want to, type that out a little bit better, I can maybe get your last name right. And then the username down here, this account name, that only shows up under the hood in macOS. Regular users won't typically see that, but it does need to be there because, well, macOS is built on top of BSD Unix, and BSD Unix requires a regular name. So I'm going to hit create, and that's going to create that second user. So there he is, Zach Memis. And see how it's divided up from me. I've got my current user, me, and I'm an admin. And then now I've got Zach Memis. He's a standard user. As an admin, I can make changes to the system. I can unlock this little lock button. If Zach logs in as a standard user, he's not able to do that. But if I change my mind and I decide I want Zach to be an admin, I just have to click Zach, and then we've got allow user to administer this computer, and I can check that off. And it just warns me I need to restart the computer for Zach to be an administrator. The reason it needs to restart is if I have something like File Vault turned on that's encrypting the drive, Zach's going to need permission to be able to unlock that drive. And so, and be able to manage File Vault too. So there's recovery keys that get added to his account, and you have to reboot for that to take effect. You don't normally have to reboot when you create user accounts. It's just like when you make a modification like this, especially with an admin. And then if I decide I don't want him to be an admin anymore, I can just take that away. And now he's going to become a standard user. It tells me I have to reboot again because it's got to remove those keys from his account. But there it is. So standard user and admin, those are the two most common. And once those are in place, now I want to point out the change. Up in my status bar, I have a new little icon, this face right here. Right, it's a little silhouette of a person, kind of hard to see. But if you click on that silhouette, this is my fast user switching panel. I can switch between users. I can switch over and log in as Zach without having to log myself out. And on a shared computer, that's super handy. Zach might come by and say, hey, Don, can I use your laptop for just 5 minutes? All right, well, I might be in the middle of something, but I can fast user switch. All my programs stay open and running in the background. Zach can now use the computer, and when he's done, I can just flip right back to me. Makes it really easy to share the system.
So, Don, you mentioned parental controls earlier. Now, would we only use those if we had kids?
Maybe, yeah. That's the intent, right?
Okay.
And the intent is if you have kids, children that you want to protect, then you want to restrict what applications they can run, what websites they can visit, and so on. And parental controls do that. Now, we have a whole episode on parental controls coming up, but the user account is where we enable that functionality, right? So, for example, I've got Zach created, and if I look at Zach's account here, it just shows as a standard user, and that's it, right? And there's not really anything else available here. But if I turn on parental controls, his account isn't really a standard user anymore. He becomes a bit of a special account. So let me go back out. Parental controls, we do actually have to step out a little bit to get to, because we'll find those options in here. And if I'm just going to do a quick search to find it, it is parental controls under screen time. I turned off screen time during the setup. So if we go in here and turn on screen time, we can pick the user that we want to configure, and I can get that turned on for Zach. And when that happens, back under my user screen, right here, Zach's account wouldn't show up as a standard account anymore. It would show up as a user account with managed parental control. So it would show as being special there and kind of designate it that way. And Zach, you asked about, do we just use it for kids? You can use it for grown-ups, or high school children that are, 16, 17 years old, to restrict what they're able to do on your system. If you want your system to kind of operate in like a kiosk mode where it can just run one program, you can use screen time and parental controls to do that, to basically say the only program allowed to run is this one line of business application. And so now when that user is logged in, they can just run that one application. That's not necessarily a kid in this case, but a creative way of using that. So it's multi-purpose, but it does actually change that user account and make them behave differently because they're now being restricted in terms of their access.
Well, we also have sharing-only accounts. Is that something that we would be using with shared folders? Because it sounds like that.
Yep, and we are going to see that more when we get into
Yeah.
our network and sharing episodes, but there's times where you want somebody to be able to access a file on your computer, but you don't actually want them to be able to log in physically to the machine. So for example, let's say I had some files that I wanted to share with Zach. Zach's got his own Mac. I've got my Mac. I don't want him to come and log into my Mac as a user. I don't want to have to log me out and turn it over to him. I just want him to be able to come over the network to access something, all right? In that case, that's a shared only account, right? So let's go back into my user preferences here. And I've got to unlock again because I browsed away. And I'm going to add a new user. And when I added that user, I chose standard, but see how I've got sharing only right here? I can choose sharing only and create an account. Maybe we'll create an account for Ronnie Wong. So Ronnie, one of our other edutainers, I'm going to create an account for him. He'll be R Wong, and I'll provide a password for him. This is basically identical to what we did for Zach, right? And when I hit create user, it's going to create that user. And there he is, Ronnie Wong. Now, see how it shows sharing only? A sharing only user is different than a standard user. A standard user could walk right up to the computer and log in and use the physical computer. But a sharing only user can only come in via the network. They can't actually get what's called an interactive login on my system, a physical console login on the system. Instead, they need to use their own computer and browse to a shared folder, a shared printer, or whatever. So in the case of Zach, if he's going to be accessing my system over the network, I wouldn't create a standard user. Now, I showed how easy it was to flip between a standard user and an admin, right? It was just a checkbox. It's not like that with a sharing only user. Notice on the sharing only user, the only option I have is reset password. And that's it, right? So there's no flip or change or whatever. That's just what that account is going to be now. So if I want to change Ronnie from being a sharing only to a standard user, I would actually have to delete the account and recreate it. A sharing only user doesn't get a home directory. They don't have a documents folder and all that stuff, right? That's for a standard user. So these are very different, and so they get treated differently. But they get displayed on the screen right intermixed with the other user accounts. So it gets a little confusing sometimes.
Well, the last user type is group, and I'm no expert, but that doesn't sound like a user to me at all. Why is that grouped in with the user account?
All right, so groups we're going to talk more about in the permissions episode. But the reason they're thrown in here is one, so we just have one tool to go to, right? Apple's trying to make it easy for us to manage this. But groups are designed to collect users together, right? Let's say I wanted to give access to some folders, and I wanted Zach to have access, and I wanted Ronnie to have access. Well, I could go to the folders, and I could pick Zach and give him permission, and then I could pick Ronnie and give him permission. Well, with 2 people, it's not so bad. What if I had 10 people or 20 people? That's a lot of permissions to set.
It is.
And it would take a lot of time to get all that set up. Or I could just create a group, and that group could contain all 20 users. And now I just need to give permission to the group. It makes permissions management super easy, right? That's the purpose of a group. And it's up to us whether we want to use it. It's a totally optional thing. You don't have to use groups. If you're not sharing folders out, you're not doing permissions, then you probably don't need the groups at all, right? But in my case, maybe I'm planning on it. So I'm going to come in here and I'll hit the plus sign. And instead of adding a user, I'm going to add a group. And when I go to add a group, I can type a name. So maybe this will be my edutainers. And so these are going to be other edutainers that I want to have access. I'll hit create group, and now I've got it. And I can go and pick who's going to be in that group. So maybe it's Zach, me, and Ronnie. I'll just check off the users, and now I've got that group available. And I can create more groups and add them in. So, maybe I have another group, which is my employees group. Whoops, I need to make sure I choose that in the dropdown. So this is going to be like all the employees. And so I can go in, and notice what I can do here. I can do nested groups. So I have edutainers. Maybe I also have a group called sales for salespeople or marketing or whatever, right? We'll do marketing because marketing is fun. So we'll do marketing. And then under employees, maybe I've got edutainers and marketing. So all of the people are in employees, but then I've got just edutainers, just marketing. And then I use them when appropriate. If I want to share something just with marketing, I would use the marketing group. But if I want to share it with everybody, I would use the employees group. And so that's going to make my job easier for managing permissions. You don't have to use it. It's a totally optional feature. But if you're setting up a file server or a print server, it comes in really handy.
Well, it's great that you can get so granular with that, huh?
Yeah,
Local
absolutely.
user accounts, another wonderful episode. Before we move on, Don, anything else?
All right, we talked about the 5 different user accounts. I just want to reiterate, we are going to revisit some of these, especially with parental controls. We'll have a whole episode on that, and sharing and permissions. We've got that coming up as well. But standard users and administrative users, those are the 2 most common. That's what you're going to make use of. So we got a chance to see how to create those, how we can view and even change those, and some of the little security gotchas we have, like the fact that we have to reboot anytime we change an administrative user because of some of the security controls in Big Sur.
Thanks, Don. Glad you're here. And I'm glad you're here. And thank you for joining us for this episode of ACSP macOS 11 Big Sur. We will see you again soon.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.